Alright guys, what's up? We got a spicy one today. This is the Victory Kraken MKIII. And huge shout out to the guys at Zzounds for sending me this to try out here in the studio, take it on stage, put it to the test in a live environment, see what I think about it, and then bring it back here in front of the camera and show you guys what this thing is all about. I'm not going to waste any time. I think this amp is awesome. If you don't watch the rest of this video, this amp is badass. It does everything from beautiful cleans, really rich, crunchy sounds that can go from edge of breakup, bluesy type stuff, all the way to a super high gain, modern rock sounds just on one channel. Like, this amp does so much just right for me. And I think that there are a lot of players that can fill in tons of different genres. This amp will just sound spectacular in. So, anyways, the signal path for today's video is the Tokai LS150 with the Brian Conaheck Sheptone PAF pickups going into the Golden Boy down there on the board, into the amp, into the aux box, into the interface. Doing things a little bit differently today, not going through the cabinet because we got family here for summer vacation and kind of don't want to disturb the peace around here. But the aux box, man, it sounds spectacular. And if you guys have watched any of my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of my aux stomp. This is just basically that and an attenuator all kind of wrapped up into one really, really convenient package. So that's what you're going to hear today. Everything's going to be DI. I've got a couple of room mics in here, but I don't know if I'm going to actually use them or not because I don't know how everything's going to sit in the mix. But depending on what I do with the miking situation, I will put an annotation here. And that way you guys will know kind of what I did to create the sound. And I've got the iPad right over here where I can manipulate the effects and things like that, so we can kind of hear the amp dry with a little reverb and some things like that. So we'll go through that. Let me get the screen recording here. And I've also got a 2-button foot switch set up that can turn on or off delay and the compressor, which the compressor is mostly set up as a volume boost and not a whole lot of actual compression going on. And I've also got one of the 2-button foot switches that's included with the amp to toggle between clean and crunch and gain 1 and gain 2. The second foot switch actually can toggle between master 1 and master 2 if you have the amp set up a certain way, and it also has a solo boost which toggles gain 2 and master 2 at the same time. And we'll kind of go through a little bit of that with the switches and knobs and things like that, because despite it being a small little package, there is a lot of flexibility and buttons and switches and things like that that you can really use to kind of make it do exactly what you want it to do. So let's get started here. I've got the controls here on the iPhone recording, so you'll be able to see what the controls do. And this is just a good old crunch sound. And this is gain 2. And the clean. All right, a little plate reverb here. Okay, now I've got the orange drive mode turned on the Golden Boy. Alright, I'm back on the crunch channel and we're gonna roll it back to see how clean of a crunch we can get. So this is how it originally was. So lost some output there, but here's where the tricks can come in handy. So there's a switch on the back of the amp, and I'll put a screenshot of the actual back controls on the amp. There's a switch right over here, and what that does is it links gain 2 with master 2. So what this lets us do is we can crank the master for gain 1. Check my levels over there. And we're going to turn that on so that it links gain 2 with master 2. Now, what this lets us do is essentially compensate for that volume drop by giving gain 1 higher master and gain 2 is back down kind of where it always was at the beginning of the video. So we'll switch over. So what this also presents is another problem that they've got a solution for. If I leave the crunch channel and go back over to, all of a sudden I've got another volume drop that just happened. There's a volume knob for that. So if we crank this volume knob for the clean channel up, it lets us compensate for that volume drop that you would get by dropping the gain so far down, because the clean's volume is tied to the gain knob itself. So if big jump there. So that's why that switch for linking gain 2 and master 2 and the separate volume control for the clean channel are such useful little tricks for this amp that really make it usable in any configuration that you're wanting to use the amp with. So again, like, very impressive. There's 2 more switches on this thing. One of them is a presence voicing switch and the other one is a bass tight or loose switch, and we're gonna go through those. So tell you what, let's take the crunch channel and we're gonna back everything back kind of how it was. And we're going to take the crunch channel and give it a little bit more gas here, and lower the clean. Okay. All right, so I hope I got the right switch. There's one, there's two. Okay, so I'm gonna change the bass response switch. Right now it's in kind of the bigger bass, the quote unquote looser bass. Tell you what, it's probably gonna be more evident on the gain 2 channel. So let's go over there. So that's big bass. Tightened up bass. So that's what that does. I like having it in the big bass. Now, presence voicing, I have it set to, I guess, the brighter of the two voicings. Okay, so on the darker of the two voicings, I'm gonna raise the presence up. That's the new, much talked about feature of this amp, the Mark II version. Going to go back to the bright setting. So with the presence knob all the way down, that essentially cuts it out of the circuit, making it sound like the original Kraken. And to a degree, I do agree that this amp is a little bit dark. It's not something I can't compensate for with an EQ pedal in the loop, or with, in this particular situation, the EQ in the aux box. I mean, we can juice that top end up, no problem. In fact, see over here. So yeah, there is a difference there, and I do think that adding even just a little presence, that's a huge difference. All right, gonna switch gears here. All right, Got the Aaron Marshall Schecter here, and we're gonna see what this thing sounds like. Dropped a little bit lower with a little hotter output pickups going back on the clean channel with a little chorus out of the aux box. It's actually a delay feature since it's a time-based thing. But this is what it sounds like. Had a pretty big plate reverb setting on there too. All right, time for some gain. All right, Golden Boy Orange Boost is on. All right, now the light blue drive mode is on and the orange boost is off. All right, Golden Boy's off. Here's gain 2. Okay, yeah, kind of got a little carried away there with all the really awesome sounding delays in this aux box. It's actually the first time that I've really dug into those. So, yeah, I mean, the guitar, the amp, everything, it just sounds so good everywhere. And that's what I mean when I say it's the most, kind of the most feature complete product that I've played in a very long time. The cleans are incredible. The crunch is amazing and has tons of flexibility. Gain 1 is the amp for me. It has range all the way from just a light, very, very light, broken up, clean sound, all the way to like really high gain. Like, I mean, dimed out. I mean, that's a ton of gain for a crunch channel. But then you can, throw in like a boost on top of that. Like, that kind of flexibility is awesome. I mean, the channel gain is usable everywhere. The EQ controls are usable pretty much everywhere too. There's not a harshness to the presence being all the way up. I've got the treble dimed and it's not harsh. It's just crisp and clean and clear. The mid-range, the amp sounds great everywhere. The bass, I mean, you saw the bass was pretty much cranked all the way up most of the first half of this video, and it's not flabby or flubby. It's punchy, clear, articulate, and just everything sounds really good everywhere. And there's not a lot of amps that I've played that can do that. None of my other amps can do that. The Jubilee, I can roll the some of the controls down and it'll thin out like nobody's business and really doesn't sound very good. Sounds great with all of them cranked up all the way, which is typically how I run the amp. So when I was deciding, I was like, well, what does this sound like when I just crank everything up? What happens if I just dime everything? I was impressed. It sounds awesome. And the same goes for the controls on the back. The deep switch and the presence control, the amp still sounds great no matter where they are. They're subtle, but they're effective in what they were designed to do. So this amp just gets all the points right. It just does everything just right for me. And everyone who I've talked to who has played other Victory amps, they say the same things about those. So I'm really excited to try out some of these other amps. I think the first amp on my list that I really want to try out after this one is the Jack, which I believe, from what I've heard, is kind of like a brother to this amp, where it really doesn't have as much high gain tightness, but it makes up for it in more of a fatter, sweeter, a little bit more compressed sound. And I think for me personally, what our band plays, I think that might fit just a little bit better for our sound. It sounded incredible on stage. It did everything perfectly. So even Gain 2, I didn't use it a whole lot at our show, but when I did, it was good. I used it for a Limp Bizkit song and a Metallica song, and I think that might be it, but it sounded great for those two songs. The rest of the songs, I'll use the Boss Waza Boost on top of the Crunch channel, and man, it sounded really good too. So it kind of brings me into the one little nitpick gripe that I have with the amp, and that is I feel like a little too much low end drops out on gain 2. And when you're on stage, it's not really as noticeable as it is here in the studio. When I was on stage, I really couldn't tell much of a difference at all. It was running into the hot plate, into the aux stomp pedal, into the board, and I had the FR behind me, and I had it also in my in-ears, and I really couldn't tell that there was a dropout in low end, if I'm being perfectly honest. So it's a nitpick that if I were to have an input into the Mark III version of this amp, I would say changing the low end switch from an on or off switch, I would say make it a 3-way toggle switch. And what that would let you do is you could have it either on one gain, or you could either have it on gain 1, you could have it on gain 2, or you could have it on both. And so what that would let you do is you could, if you wanted it to where gain 1 was fatter, you could have it switched over to the gain 1 position. And then when you click over to gain 2, it tightens up and drops off those lows and kind of punches up the top end a little bit. And if you wanted both channels to have that big beefy low end, you could have the 3-way toggle set to have it on both. So if that's something that they're thinking about, that would be really cool. I think that that's really the only thing that I don't like about this amp, and it's a very, very minor complaint. So clean channel is big, punchy, loud, clear, just really deep and luscious on stage. Crunch channel did everything. All the 90s rock stuff, it does so good on the 90s rock and 2000s rock. And hitting it with the boost, I mean, you've heard what it does with the gain cranked up all the way, and it's for me on stage, it's easy to go from like halfway if we're doing like a kind of like a more of a pullback song, like if we're doing like Matchbox 20 or 3 Doors Down or something like that. You don't need a ton of gain for that, so I keep the gain about halfway. But then when we kick it up to, like we played a Fuel song, and I bumped the gain up about 3/4 of the way, and did great for that stuff too. So again, tons of flexibility, lots of great sound, sounds good everywhere. I think that if you're looking for something that isn't specifically a Marshall or a Mesa type sound, but you want something that can cover sonically what those amps cover, this is a good kind of man in the middle. And if you're after a very specific sound from one of those other types of amps, you might be disappointed with this if you want a Marshall sound. If that's what you're after, this isn't it. This is a Victory amp. It does not sound like a Marshall. A Marshall sounds like a Marshall. So if that's what you're wanting, it might still be worth it to give it a try to see if it can give you the sound, kind of the overall structure of the sound that you want, because I think that this does cover a lot of territory that some of the high gain Marshall type sounds live in. But if you're after something extremely specific, don't try something else. Just go after what produces that extremely specific sound, and that's what's probably going to make you the happiest. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for the review of the Kraken MKII. Again, big shout out to the guys at Zzounds for sending me this to try out for a little while, to take it on stage and really see what I think about it. I'm so glad that I took a chance on this amp and didn't follow my initial suspicions and preconceived notions on how this thing would sound, because this blew everything away. It's a great amp. And if you want to try it out, I'll have an affiliate link for everything that I've used in this video to get all of these sounds in the video description, so that if you want to check any of this stuff out, you can help my channel and use those affiliate links. Doesn't cost you guys anything extra, but it'll help support my channel. Speaking of helping support the channel, another thing you can do if you're one of the many people who are not subscribed, click the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on when I release new videos. And if you like the video, man, give it a thumbs up. It definitely helps the algorithm. I've had a couple of people now message me and be like, hey, one of your videos popped up on my feed kind of out of nowhere. And for a couple of those people, it's been guys who I haven't talked to in over a decade, since the old Harmony Central Amp Forum days. So it's really cool that the system is starting to work, but it can only work if you guys help out the channel by hitting the like and subscribe button. So anyways, I'll be back in another video, kind of getting a little bit more in depth with this Aaron Marshall guitar and give you my thoughts on it, because it was on stage with me with the Victory, and got some good things, got some bad things, but we're going to talk about that in the video for this guitar, which will be shortly after this. So anyways, stay tuned guys. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.